serving with Senator Capito as the majority chair of the Committee on Environment and Public Works. She is our ranking member, and she hosted just a terrific field hearing yesterday in West Virginia. And I just want to thank her and her staff again for your hospitality and for putting together just a wonderful forum as we look forward to providing better access to drinking water for people throughout this country and meeting the wastewater treatment rates as well. Just by way of introduction, Senator Capito, I'm also delighted that my wingman, Senator Chris Combs, is here. Lisa Von Rochester is going to be speaking later. At-large Congresswoman is here, and our witnesses are here. We welcome you all. Shelley, just as a way of introduction, Dover is the capital of Delaware. Wasn't always the capital of Delaware. In the beginning, there was a place up the road about 40 miles called Newcastle, right in the Delaware River, where William Penn came to this country many, many years ago and landed bringing the deeds to Pennsylvania, what would become Delaware. And after a number of years, the folks here in Delaware decided they want a capital in Dover. And we have had a capital here for a long time. We've had an Air Force base here for a long time as well. And there's an award that's made by the Air Force every year. It's a Commander-in-Chief's award for the best airlift base on the planet. Dover Air Force Base, I think, has won it more times than anyone else. And also, you know, the site for the remains of our fallen heroes when they come back to this country to be united with their family members. We have some businesses here we used to have used to be able to drive into Dover on certain mornings of the week and it smelled like chocolate because we had a chocolate pruning factory. We still have the factory and make other things now. And we have, any number of businesses that are located here in our state capital. We also have part of our national park is here and a couple of great state parks as well. So that's just a little bit about I'll do right. I just also mentioned that before we had governors, we had presidents in the state. And one of our early presidents was a guy named Caesar Rodney. And Caesar Rodney's famous for riding his horse. A couple of days before July 4th, 1776, he rode his horse from Dover, Delaware to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and cast the tie-breaking vote in favor of the Declaration of Independence. So we're proud of that as part of our heritage. And on December 7th, 1787, after deliberating for about 3 days, 25 white guys from all over Delaware had read and debated the draft Constitution Senate from Philadelphia, and they, after debating, voted unanimously to ratify the Constitution, and thus Delaware became the first state. And it happened literally 3 miles from where we gathered here today. So a little bit about us, and we're thrilled to be holding this field, and delighted that you could all be with us. We have actually 2 panels of witnesses. One is a one-woman show, and it's our at-large Congresswoman, and she'll be followed by Cassandra Fotis Johnson. Cassandra, would you raise your hand? All right, welcome, Cassandra. Vicki Prettyman. Vicki, would you raise your hand? Vicki, nice to see you. And Rick Duncan. Rick. I said I see Rick almost as much as I see my wife. Not quite as much, but he's ever present in my life. And I think it's a good thing. But we're delighted that you're all here. And today we're going to focus on the challenges facing our drinking water infrastructure of people in this state, especially, particularly in small, rural, disadvantaged communities of Delaware. As the recovering governor of Delaware, I said that, and Shelley's dad was governor 3 terms of West Virginia, so she's the daughter of a recovering governor. But as the former governor of Delaware, I said that my role was and is as a United States Senator to help create a nurturing environment for job creation and growth within the first state. And that's a tall order in and of itself, but one that is nearly impossible to achieve without access to clean and reliable drinking water. Senator Coons knows as a former county executive, and so knows as Senator Rogers, who knows as a cabinet member many times over, and now as a congresswoman. Businesses don't want to be in places where the water's not fit to drink. and they don't want to be in places where there's not adequate wastewater treatment. So this is an incredibly important element in as we try to create that nurturing environment for job creation and job preservation. When it comes to drinking water, Delawareans face a host of contamination issues with water that flows from our taps. A lot of places, most places in Delaware, the water is just fine. And a clear majority, vast majority of the water is just fine, but not every place. And that's a concern to all of us. From water pipes that contain lead to toxic pollutants like PFAS, one of the permanent chemicals that we hear about. Communities need a lot of assistance to address these issues, and fortunately, we, those of us that are up here and here, can help with that, and we're intent on doing that. In Sussex County alone, that's our southernmost county, Shelley's one of the largest counties in America. They raise more chickens there than any county in America. We raise in Delaware 300 chickens for every person who lives in Delaware. So and we import in the port of Wilmington more bananas than any port in the states, in the country. So if you're eating chicken and bananas, we're your place. But in Sussex County alone, there's almost 100,000 people. More than half the county's population rely on private wells for their drinking water. And while some homeowners choose this option, other folks live too far from the municipality to access public utilities. Some of these Delawareans are finding excess contaminants like nitrates, like iron in the water, which we know can contribute to adverse health impacts. And those health impacts are more likely to affect low-income households who cannot afford a home filtration system. And we can and must do more to help these families. Many families in Delaware and across our country, especially those with young children, are also concerned about the lead in their water. And this potent contaminant leaches into drinking water from lead pipes, from faucets and fixtures. In children, low levels of exposure have been linked to damage to the central and peripheral nervous systems, learning disabilities, shorter stature, impaired hearing, and impaired formation and function of blood cells. There is no safe level of lead in drinking water. And while we've not seen lead contaminants in levels anywhere near those in cities like Flint, Michigan, drinking water tests in 20 locations in Delaware since 2012 revealed lead levels above the federal safety threshold. Often, this contamination is found in communities with small systems that do not have sufficient resources to manage their aging water systems. And given the damage that even the smallest amount of lead poisoning can cause, especially in children, we must work to ensure that all communities have the knowledge and resources to replace lead service lines to ensure safe, clean water for our most vulnerable citizens. We also have problems in Delaware with well and ground water contamination from toxic forever chemicals like PFOA, like PFAS. We call them forever chemicals because once they enter our body and once they enter our environment, they can take thousands of years to decompose and break down. We don't have thousands of years to address these issues. We must act quickly to ensure that all citizens in Delaware, all citizens in West Virginia, and beyond our borders have access to clean, safe drinking water. Together, Senator Capito and I took significant steps to address these needs through our Drinking Water and Wastewater Infrastructure Act. That bill formed the basis for the Senate's Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which passed the Senate by a strong bipartisan majority. My recollection was 89 to 2. Right. 80, we don't pass many bills by 89 to 2. They do that in the House, I'm sure. 89 to 2. This bill provides billions of dollars for water projects across the country, directly targeting the communities with their most needs, places like Ellendale, just south of us here in Sussex County. It took more than 3 decades for Ellendale to pass a referendum that would allow low-income neighborhoods to connect to a public water system. I'll say that again. It took more than 3 decades for Ellendale to pass a referendum that would allow low-income neighborhoods to connect to a public water system. Funds from this bill will help make sure that no community has to wait 30 years to have clean water flow from its taps. Specifically, our bill provides $55 billion to the Drinking Water State Revolving Loan Fund, the Clean Water State Revolving Loan Fund, and the Small and Disadvantaged Community Program, which will help Delaware and other states finance a variety of community and statewide water infrastructure projects through grants and through debt forgiveness. This legislation provided much more funding for the Assistance for Small and Disadvantaged Communities grant program, which improves access to clean, safe drinking water, including the purchase of filtration systems. This grant program targets assistance to disadvantaged communities from across the country. Our bill also provides $15 billion for the removal and replacement of lead pipes, a substantial down payment toward the replacement of all lead pipes in all of our communities. A friend of mine asked him how he's doing, and he says, compared to what? Compared to what we spent and invested in the past for removal and replacement of lead pipes, $15 billion is a huge amount of money. There's very real need for this kind of communities here in Delaware and West Virginia, where Senator Capito represents, and in every state in our nation. Too many of our fellow citizens don't have clean drinking water, and yet they have every right to expect that they and their children would be able to drink freely and safely from their taps. And with this legislation investment it enables, we have the opportunity to right a terrible wrong and meet our moral responsibility to ensure all Americans can trust the water that flows through their faucets. And before I yield and turn to our ranking member, Senator Capito, I just want to mention, just close with this in mind. When William Penn showed up and landed on by right there in Newcastle, Delaware, about 40 miles north of us, bearing the deeds of what would become Pennsylvania and Delaware. Most of the people then, and for centuries after that, they would get their water from streams, or they would get their water from the wells that they drilled. Over time, we developed municipal wastewater treatment systems, and that was good for some people. Other people continued to drink water from wells and from streams. When 1972, the Clean Water Act was, I don't know, was signed into law. I think it was enacted over Richard Nixon's veto, as I recall. But we created EPA, and EPA began making grants to states, to communities for wastewater treatment systems, for drinking water systems. We did that, I think, until about 1987. Ronald Reagan became president. I was in the House. And we created a new system. We created for every state two distinct state revolving funds, one of them for drinking water and the other for water sanitation, for wastewater treatment. And then the federal government would seed each of the two revolving funds in all 50 states. The states would have to match those dollars. And the entities in the states, whether utilities or communities or counties or whatever cities, if they borrowed money from the revolving funds, they had to repay the money with interest. That worked pretty well for a long time, and it still does. Here's the problem. The problem is not every community, like Ellendale, like some of the places we visited in West Virginia yesterday, they don't have the ability to repay the money. They just don't have they have huge need. They need to draw monies down from those two revolving funds. They don't have the ability to repay the money. And the legislation, Senator Capito and I, we made sure we did this. And I think I was helpful in that, my staff. We made sure that communities in distress, communities in need, that simply don't have that wherewithal, they have the ability to get help too, both on the drinking water side and on the wastewater treatment side. And with that, I'm going to turn to our ranking member, Senator Capito, with whom I'm privileged to lead this committee. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Senator Carper. Thank all of you for coming. Thank you, Senator Coons. It's always good to see our fellow senators in their home states. Everybody has a little springier step, I must admit, than when we're trudging the halls of the United States Capitol. So this is my first visit to Dover, Delaware. I've been to Delaware before, but when Senator Carper mentions that the aroma of chocolate used to fill this great city, I can think of a lot of worse things that could happen than to have to wake up and smell chocolate every day. That sounds like a dream to me. We did have a wonderful session in Beckley, West Virginia, where I'm going to be very interested to see what our similarities are, because I think there are many, because obviously driving over here, the realization that Delaware is a very rural state in many, many ways, and also probably has some of the economic challenges that we have in the state of West Virginia in terms of affordability, and how do you build systems and redo systems that were built 50, 60 years ago to meet the challenges of a growing population, but also just aging infrastructure. And so I'm really pleased to be here to hear how Delaware is coping with these problems, and it's great to be here with your representative, Blunt Rochester. Actually, I think we met one other time, but I know of her great service in the House. And so I also want to tell you, you've got two great senators, but I get to see Senator Carper all the time. And he is passionate about what he does. He's dogged in his determination, and he's a great communicator. We were just talking about how he calls everybody on their birthday. So that's 99 other people, and then I heard today that it's not just us you're calling. So you must have had that down by now with the birthday greetings. But anyway, it's very much appreciated. And
Chuck Grassley says to me about every other day, "It's not my birthday today. You don't have to call me today."
So I'm happy to be here with his leadership and the partnership that we share, and to see this in his home state. I also want to thank the chairman for his willingness to work and to address these challenges earlier with the bill that he talked about, the Drinking Water and Wastewater Infrastructure Act. And I won't get into the details and repeat, but I will repeat that we had not only a unanimous vote out of our EPW committee, and we have some pretty disparate believing members on that committee. When you can get Bernie Sanders and Jim Inhofe to make the same vote, you're doing something right. And then off the floor at 89-2. And this is what this bill, this water bill, is what is the basis of what you have heard of and is much discussed as the bipartisan infrastructure package. And our water bill is contained wholly within that bill, verbatim, everything that we passed 89-2 out of the Senate. So it's common. The whole package is a common sense, bipartisan piece of legislation that not just handles water and wastewater, but also roads, bridges, and broadband, which is a very difficult challenge in certain parts of my state, being not mountainous and rural. It's very much of a challenge. So I would like to thank our witnesses for being here today, and look forward to hearing their perspectives. Mr. Chairman, we talk every week as he's getting ready to either get on the train, or he's on the train, or he's thinking about getting on the train to come home. Every day Americans rely on the infrastructure that supports our drinking water systems. These are the systems that this nation really has prided itself on. Many of us have traveled all around the world and have seen the things that we take for granted in terms of water are so desperately needed all across not just our country, but around the world. Unfortunately, this nation is facing critical challenges in the resiliency of these systems, and with many of our small and rural communities disproportionately affected by the wide array of water infrastructure challenges. You mentioned some of the chemical challenges, but also in my state, we have an issue with losing the resource because we have aging infrastructure, and by the time it goes from the treatment plant to the home, we've already lost 50% of our water. Now think of our friends in California, what they would think about that. I've often wondered, we ought to be building a pipeline out there, pipeline in our water. We can make a lot of money on that. Small rural communities are particularly strained and need additional support. But these are not, as I said, unique challenges to just one state. So I'm committed to addressing these challenges that we are facing. Reliable, modern water infrastructure is a fundamental responsibility of our government. And I think we did address this in our drinking water and wastewater infrastructure bill. As he has said, it provides lots of funding for new programs, but also existing ones, ranging from ensuring that you can imagine who put this one in. Systems have pipes that don't leak, there I am, to ensuring that there is a sustainable water workforce, another passion of mine, and that can operate and continue new infrastructure investments. We provided a robust, and yes, I'll say it again, amazingly bipartisan piece of legislation that has a lot of toolbox of solution and alternatives. So I look forward to hearing what you all have to say. Thank you for being so welcoming to me and my staff. I want to thank your staff, Senator Carper, and also the good folks here in the courthouse for accommodating us. And it's my honor to be here with all of you to hear from the great folks in the great state of Delaware. Thank you.
Well, thank you for those remarks. When I was in the Senate, we had a fellow named Chuck Grassley. And the following last caucus, we were two people on the Senate Finance Committee, which is a committee I'm now privileged to serve on. And they used to meet every week. One thing, one week. And eventually they started getting some staffing meetings. If you go to that meeting, you wouldn't know. And I just, see what ideas, and we started on that idea, and that's really what we're doing on the I call them sometimes on the route to West Virginia. I'm not even trained. And it's, we have John King, John helps put the team together, but Mary Frances Webster, majority staff director on EPW, and
Adam is here. He just stepped out. He's missing his big moment.
But Adam uses one of his friends' conversations. I think one of the reasons we ended up reporting out unanimously out of committee, water infrastructure legislation, unanimously out of committee, both highways bridges, and we really provided the foundational for the infrastructure bill, which now we're actually in the United States House Representatives. So for that, I've been privileged to know Chris Coons for a long time, and his wife for a long time, even before she was his wife, and that's his wife for that. But I was thrilled that he ran for president of the election. Thrilled, ready to kind of executive. Elected, did a great job in both, and elected, he decided to take on a really big race, and ran in one election in the United States Senate. There are, I don't know how many candidates in the Senate, how many would you say, 13, 14? He serves on most of them. It's the hardest one. I think as a chef, great job. Among the committees he serves on, foreign relations.
You need to put this on.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's right.
We'll start over. William Penn. Thank you. In any event, we're thrilled that the Senator Coons was able to adjust his schedule and be with us today. He is an appropriator. We authorize stuff, but he actually provides the dollars. He can't provide the dollars without the authorization, so it's just hand in glove. And we work really well. He's got great staff. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you so much, Chairman Carper, Ranking Member Capito. It is an honor to join you and to recognize you and thank you for the remarkable leadership you've both shown in this absolutely essential work together. Both the way you've approached it and what you've delivered for the American people. There are things that tie Delaware and West Virginia, from Blades to Beckley, from Seaford to Parkersburg, parts of our industrial legacy, parts of the challenges that small, rural, and disadvantaged communities face in accessing the workforce, the funding, the infrastructure to actually deliver the safe and accessible, reliable drinking water and the wastewater treatment infrastructure that is critical for our communities. But the way you go about hammering out these solutions is inspiring to the rest of us in the Senate and is a model for how every committee should work. Frankly, if every committee worked as well as the two of you and your staff have worked together, we'd have a whole lot more solutions to the problems facing our country. And your leadership on the Drinking Water and Wastewater Infrastructure Act, which authorizes, as you said, $35 billion in critically needed investments, is an absolutely central part of the bipartisan infrastructure bill, which we hope will soon be journeying to our president's desk. To Congresswoman Blunt Rochester, thank you for your leadership on these issues, and in particular, your legislative leadership in moving the Low-Income Water Customer Assistance Program Act, a truly innovative approach to addressing these key issues. I look forward to hearing from Vicki and Cassandra and Rick. I recognize that my predecessor as County Council President, Stephanie Hansen, now State Senator Stephanie Hansen, an environmental lawyer, is here with us today. I was also encouraged to see Sitha Coleman Kamala from the Center for PFAS Solutions here. I just came from Dover Air Force Base. All of us know that we have legacy challenges to address in our country, both in affordability, quality, and access of water. No one could craft better solutions than the chair and ranking member of this important committee. Thank you for your tireless dedication to making the environment, the water, the future better for all of us.
I'm really glad you came and said all that. Do you need more time? Thank you. Thank you, Senator Coons. Thank you, Chris. Thank you for being my wingman, my colleague, and my friend. Now I get to introduce our first witness, Congresswoman Lisa Blunt, Rochester. Lisa represents our state in the United States House of Representatives. She is an assistant whip. Are you still an assistant whip? Assistant whip for House leadership. She sits on the House Committee on Energy and Commerce. And what's the tagline of the Commerce Committee? What is it?
If it moves, it's energy. If it stays still, it's commerce. We control everything.
He was chairman for life. But this is in the House. I served in the House for 10 years. I was on a couple of good committees. Senator Caput, how long were you in the House?
14.
14 years. Were you an appropriate? What did you serve on?
I was on financial services and transportation.
Good. All right. Those are good committees. I served on banking, but the committee that you serve on is the end-all be-all. So we're really lucky that to have a seat on that committee. The committee has broad jurisdiction, as the Congresswoman said, over, among other things, healthcare, our environment, commerce, trade, energy policy, telecommunications, manufacturing, consumer protection, and drinking water. To the point today. As the Energy and Commerce Committee's only former statewide health official, Lisa understands the importance of clean water as it relates to health. Lisa has spent her time Energy and Commerce working on addressing the disparity in federal services for communities of color and tackling our nation's opioid and addiction epidemic. She's been an amazing addition to the Delaware delegation. We could not ask for a better advocate in the House to meet our state's needs. And we're delighted you're with us today, Lisa. Please
Thank
proceed.
you so much. Good morning, Chairman Carter. Good morning, Senator Capito, Ranking Member. Good morning, Senator Coons. It is truly an honor and a blessing to be here. Senator Carper mentioned working hand in glove in the Senate, but we as a delegation work hand in glove. And as I said, I think we're the best delegation in the country. No offense, Senator Capito, but I think we're the best delegation in the country, and I am just honored to be here. Good morning also to the witnesses, my fellow witnesses. I want to first start off by thanking the two of you, Senator Carper and Senator Capito, for your leadership. It has been mentioned before, but even calling this important hearing, I think for many of us in Delaware, but also across the country, this is a great opportunity to speak to the unique challenges that households in small, rural, and disadvantaged communities face every day to secure clean drinking water and wastewater services. I also want to thank the chairman and the ranking member for their strong leadership. It's been said a couple of times, your work in a bipartisan manner, work that will really have an impact on the communities across our country as they access these services. It is exemplary, as both Senator Coons has mentioned. I think we all know that if we all worked as well as you two work together and as well as your committee, we might even solve world peace. So we, first of all, thank you so much for your leadership. You are a true example, your committee of bipartisan work. This past year, the Drinking Water and Wastewater Infrastructure Act of 2021, which passed the Senate earlier this year, includes a provision that would establish a pilot program at the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency to assist low-income communities with their drinking water and wastewater utility bills and help fund upgrades to aging drinking water and wastewater infrastructure. This is an important step to provide long-needed improvements in water quality and accessibility for the communities that need it most. Wastewater accessibility and affordability in the United States have been a mounting crisis for years. I've seen it firsthand in communities across our state. During my time with then Governor Carper, recovering Governor Carper, I had the opportunity to visit small communities that have been struggling with contaminated well water for decades. Towns like Ellendale, a small community in Sussex County with around 500 residents. Nitrate, iron, and other pollutants in private wells have forced residents in communities such as Ellendale to use bottled water, not only to drink, but to cook, to clean, to bathe. In Delaware, approximately 173,000 residents or nearly 2 in 10 Delawareans use private wells. And in Sussex County, almost half of the county's residents are dependent on private wells. Some communities are in such remote and rural areas that even if they wanted to connect to a public water system, they are unable to do so. Despite this, and even though more than 13 million households rely on private wells for their drinking water, the federal government does not provide recommended standards or criteria for private wells. For Ellendale, after fighting for decades for access to clean drinking water, a new public water system that will provide safe, clean, and reliable water to the residents is finally in sight. But the problem doesn't end when a community has access to a public water system. Water must be affordable. Aging infrastructure and the rising costs of drinking water and wastewater services have culminated in rapidly rising water bills for public systems. And the COVID-19 pandemic has only exacerbated the problem. In the midst of a public health emergency of unprecedented scale, access to clean drinking water and sanitation services has never been more important. Last month, the Energy and Commerce Committee, on which I am a member, passed a measure to include $500 million to assist low-income households with their drinking water and wastewater bills during the ongoing pandemic. But even after the pandemic ends, low-income households will continue to need assistance. In almost every part of the country, families are struggling to pay their utility bills, a reality that is disproportionately affecting low-wealth communities and communities of color. That's why earlier this year, I introduced HR 3293, the Low-Income Water Customer Assistance Programs Act of 2021. This bill would address the complex problem head-on by establishing a nationwide permanent program to assist low-income households with their drinking water and wastewater bills. I am proud to have introduced this bipartisan legislation with my colleague from New York, Representative John Katko, and my colleagues from Michigan, Representatives Debbie Dingell and Rashida Tlaib. I was even prouder when the bill passed the House of Representatives earlier this year. This legislation will provide much-needed relief to struggling families and give our community water and wastewater systems the reliable revenue stream needed to plan for and afford regular maintenance and upgrades to keep our water and environment safe. Every Delawarean and every American, regardless of race, income, or zip code, should have access to clean, safe, reliable, and affordable water. It is a basic right and an essential to public health. But right now, far too many Americans are being deprived of it. We have an opportunity to right that wrong. We have an opportunity to make real and lasting improvements across our drinking water and wastewater systems. Access to water is a fundamental need, and we can and should deliver that to all Americans. I thank you, Senator Carper. I thank you, Senator Capito, for your leadership and for the opportunity to address you today. And I look forward to the day when all Americans can have clean, safe, affordable, reliable drinking water and wastewater services. Thank you again.
And to that, all God's people say, amen. Amen. We have, Senator Capito, we have in Senator Coons and Lisa, probably two of the most devout members of any faith in the Congress. And Chris was undergraduate major in chemistry, but at Yale he was a double major, divinity and law. And Lisa could be a minister in any church in the state, and a great one as well. But for them, for me, as you heard yesterday in West Virginia, there's a moral imperative. The moral imperative that requires us to address these issues. And I quote probably more often than I ought to Matthew 25, when I was thirsty, you give me to drink. And the question is, in too many cases, that what we give you to drink, what comes out of faucets of people throughout our country, including West Virginia, including too many places in Delaware, is water that's really not fit or not safe to drink, and we have a moral obligation to do something about it, and we are bound and determined to do that. Thank you so much for doing this. Great to see you. Look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you, Liz. And with that, I think we're going to break for lunch. We'll come back with the witnesses later. No, not really. I'm going to ask our three witnesses to join us at the table, please. And somebody, we may want to change out the nameplates, please. Okay. Thank you, Lisa. I'm going to go ahead and begin introducing our witnesses. Cassandra, I'm going to introduce you first. And Cassandra, code is C-O-D-E-S. Oh, where did you get that name?
Long story, Codes Johnson.
Codes?
Yes.
Code, okay. Wait, is that a family name?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Cassandra Codes Johnson, and Associate Deputy Director of the Delaware Division of Public Health. How long have you held that position?
I've been with the division for 8 years now.
8, okay.
Yes.
You started right out of school.
Yes, we'll say yes.
Good. In her current role, Cassandra provides oversight for over 700 dedicated public health staff who provide a variety of services to protect and promote the health of Delawareans, including services that protect the drinking water of our state. Thank you for that. Where did you grow up?
I'm a native New Yorker.
Where?
Long Island, New York.
Okay. How did you end up there?
My parents, they retired from working in New York and moved to the great state of Delaware. And I would visit with the grandkids and decided that this was a place where I wanted to raise my kids.
Good. So your parents get an assist on the play. That's great. Always said thanks.
Yeah.
Right. Second witness is Vicki Prettyman, State Manager of the Southeast Rural Community Assistance Project Incorporated. Vicki has served as the Delaware, Maryland State Manager for that organization since, I think last year, but is it this year? No, this year. Yeah. So you've been at this for about 4 or 5 months. In this role, she oversees a staff of 3,000 technical assistance providers, actually 3 technical assistance providers, multiple water and wastewater treatment projects for communities and municipalities across Delaware and Maryland, as well as private well and septic homeowner assistance for both states. And then maybe 1 out of 6 people in households in Delaware get the water out of wells, as I recall. Before joining CERCAP, she served as the town administrator for Blades for the past 11 years, where she managed a number of projects, which included installation of a backup well to support Blades' 2 existing wells and address the PFAS contamination in Blades water. Sources Blades is a town just in the southwestern corner of our state near Seaford. Our third witness is Rick Duncan. Rick is the Executive Director of the Delaware Rural Water Association. 2019, under Rick's leadership, the Delaware Rural Water Association broke ground on their 2nd training facility. Delaware Rural Water is one of the premier training and technical support organizations for small water service operators in the state of Delaware. Rick began his water career in 1983 as a water distribution operator with the town of Rehoboth Beach. And the word Rehoboth Beach, not many people know this, but the word Rehoboth in Rehoboth Beach means room for all. Nice, room for all. In 1997, Rick was hired by the town of Selbyville, not too far from Rehoboth, to manage its public works and water filtration and distribution system. 2000, he was elected as town councilman, and for the past 21 years continues to serve in that role, overseeing Selbyville's water facility, solid waste, local streets, and parks and recreation activity. And we want to warmly welcome each of you here. And it's just thank you from the bottom of our heart for the work that you do with your lives and the leadership that you provide here in this state. And I'm going to ask Cassandra, would you just lead us off, please? Thank you, Neil. We'll hear from each of our witnesses and then ask some questions.
Thank you. Good morning to the entire Senate Committee on Environment and Public Works. Thank you, Senator Capito and Senator Carper, for holding this hearing. Thank you, Senator Coons, for being here. Thank you, Representative Lisa Rochester, for your very important comments. My name is Cassandra Coons Johnson, and I serve as the Associate Deputy Director for the Department of Health and Social Services Delaware Division of Public Health. The Delaware Division of Public Health, through our Health Systems Protection section, regulates drinking water and administers the Delaware Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, which from here on out will be referred to as the fund. Each year, the fund, DWSRF, uses federal funds, which have been supplemented with state bond bill funds over the last several years to support drinking water systems improvement throughout Delaware. The fund supports drinking water systems throughout a combination of grants and loans, with funding in the last few years specifically focused on disadvantaged communities as identified by the median household income of a population. The fund typically provides some principal forgiveness to any drinking water project that exceeds 1.5% of the median household income as additional support for disadvantaged communities. The Division of Public Health has loaned out, often with 100% principal forgiveness, over $23 million for water infrastructure investments over the last 10 years. As we discuss the work of the fund in helping communities access clean, safe drinking water, I would like to highlight a few recent successes that also illustrate the challenges that communities in Delaware face in accessing clean, safe drinking water. Over the years, the fund helped the town of Georgetown replace water mains and service connections, including lead service lines, to improve the quality and consistency of water provided to residents. This fund also allowed Georgetown to upgrade its water treatment facilities, including installation of a new treatment plant in 2012. As one example of public health benefits, the additional treatment funded through these state and federal investments helped to remove trichloroethylene, or TCE, a solvent and known carcinogen, from the community's drinking water source. This action, together with the removal of lead service lines, will benefit the public through the reliable delivery, treatment, and storage of water for the community of Georgetown. Laurel, Delaware is another example of a community where state and federal funding programs led to public health and safety benefits for residents. Laurel replaced distribution and service connection lines, including those that contain asbestos. The town upgraded water treatment facilities to remediate high levels of nitrates, a widespread groundwater contaminant, especially in southern Delaware. This is important because nitrate contamination has been linked to health impacts such as thyroid cancer, gastrointestinal issues, miscarriages, and birth defects. Over the years, the town of Milton used resources from the fund to replace water main pipes, create loops within the pipe system, and eliminate dead ends to reduce the amount of water remaining in lines for extended periods with improved water quality. The town has also provided treatment upgrades at the water treatment facility, as well as help citizens that cannot connect to the public water system upgrade or install private wells. In the spring of 2010, the city of Seaford utilized state and federal funds for a distribution system improvement project that allowed private well owners to connect to the public water system. Well owners often face nitrates and other natural contaminants, but can also be impacted by environmental releases, surface contamination, and other factors that impact safety and quality of their drinking water. Compounding the issue, traditional DWSRF funding is often precluded from assisting homeowners with the financial burden of connecting to a nearby system. The Distribution System Improvement Project allowed the state to provide federal disadvantaged community additional subsidy, essentially paying for half of the project costs. The projects described have benefited approximately 24,000 Delawareans, almost half of which are persons of color. And many of the projects highlighted are located in rural areas of Delaware. Many rural communities, lower wealth communities, indigenous communities, and communities of color often face greater numbers of or more dangerous hazards than other communities. The multiple hazards can then aggregate to amplify harmful health impacts on these communities. These cumulative impacts can affect multiple generations and place additional weight on already overburdened communities. These communities are often referred to as environmental justice communities. In Delaware, we are working really hard to address these inequities, but require support in this effort by the federal government. The President's Environmental Justice 40 initiative sets the lofty but necessary goal of making sure that 40% of all federal funding is used to provide assistance to environmental justice communities that have long suffered from historic underinvestment in infrastructure, including water infrastructure. We support the passage of the President's Build Back Better agenda, which includes the Drinking Water and Wastewater Infrastructure Act of 2021, as well as additional funding for water infrastructure projects, lead and PFAS remediation, and support for small, rural, and disadvantaged communities. Specifically, the Drinking Water and Wastewater Infrastructure Act of 2021 supports these communities by authorizing more than $35 billion for water resource development projects across the country, with a focus on upgrading aging infrastructure, addressing the threat of climate change, investing in new technologies, and providing assistance to marginalized communities. In closing, I would like to thank the entire U.S. Senate Environment and Public Works Committee for working to invest in our nation's water infrastructure with a focus on equity, and look forward to continuing to work with you all to better meet the drinking water needs of the people of Delaware. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Cassandra. Thanks for doing this for your sake. Vicky Pray, please proceed.
Thank you, Chairman Carper and Ranking Member Capito.
I want to make sure your mic is it on?
Is that better? Oh, can you hear me now?
Light.
There we go. Sorry. Thank
We
you,
want to hear
Chairman.
every word.
Thank you, Chairman Carper and Ranking Member Capito, Senator Coons, for this opportunity to address the needs of water systems in small, rural, and tribal communities. My name is Vicki Prettyman, and I'm the Delaware and Maryland State Manager for SURCAP, the Southeast Rural Community Assistance Project. I'm sorry?
SURCAP is?
SURCAP is a technical assistance from SURCAP serves Delaware all the way down to Florida. We help rural and small communities with water and wastewater, stormwater needs.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. The Southeast Rural Community Assistance Project, we are the regional partner of our Rural Community Assistance Partnership. Last year, our CAP served more than 3.4 million rural and tribal residents, more than 2,000 of the smallest, most distressed communities, including 46 active projects in Maryland and Delaware. Water and sewer service is a driving factor for economic growth. Of the approximately 150,000 public water systems across the country, 97% serve small communities and 72% serve communities of 500 or less. Small communities are challenged by the ever-increasing cost of operations over smaller, sometimes dwindling customer base. COVID has further exacerbated the challenges rural communities face, with many suffering a significant drop in revenue when employers shut down businesses and some customers were unable to pay their bills. With the mounting financial losses, communities were forced to defer infrastructure projects, adding to the more than $1 trillion that EPA estimates the water sector needs. The burden largely falls on communities, with federal funding reduced from 63% 59 years ago to 3.5% today. Small systems in our two states coped with COVID and reduced revenue in a variety of ways. One Delaware town estimated its revenue loss of $375,000 per month and requested temporary forbearance on their USDA loans. While it's safe to say that all systems suffered some impact of COVID, it hit the small systems the hardest. There are many rural communities that are not connected to wastewater systems at all, resulting in raw sewage in yards and waterways, contaminated drinking water for residents, and the threat of associated diseases, trapping people in a vicious cycle of poverty. I want to thank Senators Capito, Booker, and former Senator Jones for introducing a bill that would create a grant program to address these challenges. There's great need in rural communities for a permanent nationwide low-income customer assistance program. A pilot program was included in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. but a 40 utility pilot program, 10 being small community systems, doesn't begin to address the need for low-income families nationwide. We have assistance programs for low-income Americans for food, shelter, heat, and healthcare, but no such program for water. I thank Representative Blunt Rochester with her work with Representative Cacto, along with Senators Cardin and Wicker for introducing bipartisan legislation, and thank you, Senators Carper and Capito, for your leadership. While we are sincerely grateful for all the hard work you have done advocating for this program's inclusion, we urge the committee to create a nationwide permanent program housed at the EPA in the budget reconciliation package. Civic and religious charity organizations are seeing a decrease in corporate and personal donations, but an increase in requests for assistance, particularly assistance to pay utility bills. The basic need, particularly assistance to pay water bills after the shutoff moratorium was lifted. The basic need for water has never been more highlighted as it has been during this pandemic. A Delaware nonprofit focusing on the needs of our most marginalized community members saw requests for assistance with water bills more than double. Before COVID, requests for assistance to pay water bill of $60, now they're seeing requests to pay water bills of $600 or more to avoid being shut off. Water systems are universally concerned about emerging contaminants. The many compounds that fall under the umbrella of PFAS have already been detected in a couple of locations in Delaware. I happen to have been the town administrator of one of those towns. The town was helped out financially and technically by state and federal agencies, but once the public health crisis was resolved with a new filtration system, the cost of operating and maintaining that system resides solely with the town. For a town of about 1,500 residents, a poverty rate of more than 22%, this can be a crushing burden indeed. Replacement of the filter media alone can cost more than $30,000, and a task that is required could be required every 3 to 6 years. There is an added issue of disposal of the old media as hazardous waste and increased operations cost of the new treatment system. Our citizens should not bear the financial burden and increase to their water bills due to remediation of these pollutants. Federal investment is needed to address these emerging issues. CERCAP works with communities and partners across Delaware and Maryland and the entire Southeast US to advocate for and generate economic opportunities and improved quality of life in rural areas. The services provided through these programs deliver critical assistance in the small and disadvantaged communities where it is most needed. I thank the committee for inviting me to testify today and look forward to working with you and your colleagues to ensure these important priorities are passed into law. I'll leave you with this one quote from former US Surgeon General in 1952. Water is essential to life, the life of a city, as well as the life of human beings. Without water, a person dies. Without water, a community faces the same fate. Thank you very much.
Who was the Surgeon General in 1952? Go ahead. You can make it up. We won't know.
I'm good writing that down, I'm sorry.
That's all right. Oh, while Rick's testifying,
Wasn't
I'm
that you?
sure you can find it.
Weren't you the
It was
Surgeon
not
General
me.
then?
It does begin
I was an
with
admiral,
L.
not a general. No, I was not an admiral. All right. With that, Rick, there's two tough acts to follow, Rick. I'm sure you're up to it, so please proceed. Delighted that you're here. Thank you.
Well, good morning. Welcome, Senator Castro, to Delaware.
Thank you.
Chairman Carper, Senator Coons, it's good to see you again. I think we met last at the opening of our aeration treatment plant in Somerville years ago, so we look forward to it. It's an honor to appear before you today and have the U.S. Senate Committee on Environment and Public Works hold its field office hearings here in Dover to talk about Delaware water issues. I am Rick Duncan, the Executive Director of the Delaware Rural Water Association, where I've enjoyed working for my past 31 years. As Senator Carper said, I'm also an elected official for the past 22 years in the town of Selbyville, which is a small municipality 55 miles south of Dover here. Delaware Rural Water is a nonprofit association of small rural communities with over 240 members. Our critical part of our mission at the Rural Water Association is to travel directly into all small rural communities and assist them with operating, governing, financing, upgrading, and maintaining their water and wastewater infrastructure. This includes in compliance with an abundance of federal Clean Water and Safe Water Act regulations, as well as all the training needed to keep local officials, operators certified, and educated on the latest rules, regulations, and technologies. It would not be an exaggeration to say that I have traveled to every community water system in the state and mostly all the public water systems, providing on-site, hands-on technical assistance over my 31 years. And I have done this probably more than one time. Delaware has 482 public water systems, of which 207 are community water systems. Only 3 of these water utilities serve populations of over 100,000 people, and only 34 serve a population between 3,300 and 10,000. That means 448 of these total 482 public water systems serve fewer than 3,300 persons. Small rural communities have more difficulty affording public drinking water and wastewater service due to the lack of population density and the lack of economic scales. This challenge is compounded by the fact that rural communities have lower average medium household incomes and often have higher rates of poverty. Many small communities have only one operator with multiple duties, not just water treatment. While a large community may have a team of technical experts, including engineers, chemists, and highly trained operators as part of the full-time staff. On behalf of all the small rural communities in the state, thank you, Senator Carper, Senator Capito, for crafting and passing in the Senate the Drinking Water and Wastewater Infrastructure Act. We enthusiastically support enactment of the bill and appreciate the many helpful and beneficial provisions for rural America in your water legislation, including the expansion of technical assistance and grants targeted communities with the greatest needs, which should help us address rural environmental justice, sustainability of water infrastructure, protecting the public from PFAS contamination, compliance with the new lead and copper rule revisions, reducing nutrient concentrations into source water, improving the country's workforce, defending against cyber attacks on water supplies, and other priorities. The town of Selbyville and municipalities in Delaware would like to sincerely thank Congress for funding we received under the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Act. Selbyville received approximately $1.4 million from this legislation. We will be using a significant portion of this funding for drinking water and wastewater infrastructure updates, including a new storage facility, filter backwash recovery, and other urgent needs. The main concern in Delaware's small and disadvantaged communities is aging water infrastructure. Much of the water infrastructure around the state is many decades old and experiencing chronic failures causing noncompliance. Pipe materials have reached their intended use age and are crumbling and failing. This deterioration is occurring while we are witnessing dynamic increases in the cost of materials like pipe, hydrants, meters, fixtures, and treatment chemicals. This adverse trend is compounded by another problematic trend. Our communities cannot fill their demand for new water and wastewater operators. We need help. Our experience in Selbyville is similar to many small rural communities in the state. Unfortunately, many are smaller, including numerous mobile home parks, where due to the limited economic scale, there is no ability to solve their water infrastructure challenges without grant-rich subsidies. In addition to funding assistance through state revolving funds, small rural communities need help with hands-on technical assistance and training with funding applications, understanding all the complicated EPA rules, including the new lead and copper rule, and training of new operators. Lack of water and wastewater operators in the workforce remains one of the most troubling trends in Delaware. We have many experienced operators retiring and very few new operators coming into the field. Currently, Delaware Rural Water collaborates with Polytech and the state's pathway education programs to train high school students who are not college-bound to be trained in basic water operations. This has been a great success for us here at Delaware Rural Water. And today, we welcome William Penn High School, which has joined us with rural watering and our training program for high school students. Rural Water is grateful for the $55 billion in water funding and the bipartisan infrastructure framework legislation, which is more EPA water infrastructure funding than anyone could imagine. Rural Water is committed to working with the state agencies and moving the funding out into projects and helping all the communities in Delaware to apply and secure the funding. It will be a quite welcome challenge to move the funding from program dollars to approved projects. Rural Water foresees a great demand for on-site technical assistance in the application process, project design, the education and new funding for all the state's rural communities. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, for the honor to testify for rural America. And we are grateful that you have included a voice for rural America in this hearing. In addition, we deeply appreciate the numerous opportunities this committee has provided rural America to be included in crafting of federal water environmental legislation and the policy. Thank you.
Well, thanks very much for all you do, and certainly for being here today and sharing those thoughts with us. Senator Coons had modified his schedule in order to be able to join us here for an hour. I just want to say thank you, not just for being here, but for being where we really need you, especially in the Appropriations Committee, to make sure that the work that Senator Capito and I are doing with our colleagues on our committee, we can authorize programs, authorize spending from now until the cows come home or the chickens come home. And it will be for naught if we don't have the appropriations. And Senator Coons delivers. So thank you, Chris.
Thank you so much, Chairman. Thank you, Ranking Member Capito. And thank you to the witnesses who've spoken so movingly about the urgent need for more funding, for more technical assistance, for more training, and a stronger workforce. When I was county executive, I was responsible for a wastewater treatment system that served 500,000 people and had 1,800 miles of sanitary sewer and 75 lift stations. And we did have that team of engineers and technical advisors. The challenges that you face in rural and disadvantaged communities is far greater than I had previously appreciated. So I'm grateful for your testimony. Thank you so much for accommodating me and allowing me to join you today. And I look forward to funding anything that you appropriate now and into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. All right, Senator Capito, would you like to lead us out? Let me just mention something, if I can, while Rick is sitting here. He's from Selbyville, elected for 21 years, did you say? There's one of the things that is different from Delaware than when I first came here a million years ago, right out of the Navy. One of the things that's different is people come here for a variety of reasons, as tourists, national park, wildlife refuges. People come here for our beaches. People come here because we have tax-free shopping. But one of the things that increasingly people come here for is because of music. And it's like 2 weeks, it was 2 weeks ago, we had the Firefly concert just up the road at the Delaware Downs. I think there's 75,000 people here. It's like the 10th year that we've done it. We've had huge acts like Paul McCartney, just some of the biggest acts in the country. You can find from all the way down to all the way north to Wilmington, the Grand Opera House, the Freeman Stage, University of Delaware, Carpenter Hall, just all up and down, including here in Dover, Selbyville. There's a place called Freeman Stage. Take just a second. My recollection is something magical is happening at Freeman Stage in terms of they can 1,500 people. I think can show up in the summers from Memorial Day through Labor Day for concerts. Some of the biggest acts around. And but I think they're creating something like a pavilion or something really exciting. Would you just take a minute on that, Rick?
The Freeman Stage is we attended several concerts there. It's a great addition to. In Selbyville, it draws and attracts a lot of people and stuff like that. So they host a lot of good events there and stuff like that. So we welcome them as much as we can. So they provide great shows.
People come to our beaches, and they're good ones. We're some of the cleanest, loveliest beaches around, and folks like to shop. And we have good food, but music. And I think they're going to be able to seat 4,500 people at the Freeman Stage in the next development. And you recall this Save Our Stages, Save Our Stages legislation, which is designed to help especially music venues that were hard hit by the pandemic. And one of the most helped is Freeman Stage. So we're delighted they're in business, up and running, still providing great entertainment. Thank you. I'm going to yield to Senator Capito for first round of questions, and we'll just take it from there. So.
Thank you. Thank all of you. Very interesting perspectives, a lot of similarities and a few differences, and probably many more similarities between our two states. And thank you for what you do for the citizens of Delaware. Let me ask a question of Ms. Coates-Johnson on the health perspectives in the PFAS area. Have you had to, and lead, I want to know, what is the pervasiveness of this in Delaware as far as you know? And are lead pipes a big issue here, and what are you seeing there?
Yes, well, I can respond more in detail on the record later for that. But yes, we do have a problem with lead pipes here in Delaware, again, due to aging infrastructure, right, in certain communities. And we have a pretty robust lead program, right, to actually do testing.
State program?
State program, state-funded lead program to help with testing of kids, right, to actually be able to determine and catch early, levels.
Have you found that that's an issue? I mean, and obviously with Flint, Michigan, that was a big issue. Are you finding that it's high, low, or it seems to be something that's been managed?
We do have a issue with lead for kids here in Delaware that we're working really hard to address. And I know Senator Hansen, who's also here, and others are really helping to lead that issue. There is a legislative body here in Delaware that is looking at the lead issue. There's a committee that is established by the governor that is working on looking at how we can strengthen both the testing and remediation for lead for kids here in Delaware.
Good, thank you. I would just FYI, those of you who are interested in the PFAS issue, I know there's some in the audience that are interested in that. We're going to be having a hearing on that in next week, I believe, with Rodica Fox, who is in charge of those issues. Both the chairman and I have been very aggressive on that in terms of pushing for some kind of drinking, safe drinking level. And hopefully we're going to get some more definitive answers from the EPA. That's been something that's a lot of interest everywhere, but certainly for the two of us, most assuredly. Let me ask you, Mr. Duncan, just so I understand the structure here, I know what our structure, you have all these rural systems, you have a couple big systems. Do you have like public service districts like we have in West Virginia, or who runs those rural services? Are they municipalities? Or? I know you only have 3 counties.
Have their areas, service areas. We also have privately owned, which is under the PSC, Public Service Commission, like that. So when
you're putting together an improvement, we talked about the cost of all of this. When you're putting together a system that needs improved, we have a Infrastructure and Jobs Council that sort of ranks these and then tries to pull funding from EDA and USDA and all this, because not one entity can afford all of this, the cost of one. I mean, some of them can, but not normally in rural areas. Do you have that kind of a system here in Delaware where you have a coordinating body that helps to get to the affordability? Because what I'm trying to get to is the issue of raising rates. Is it as big an issue in Delaware as it is in West Virginia, and certainly at the lower end it's got to be, but just in general, our communities haven't raised their rates, many of them, for many years.
As a council person, we never want to raise rates, but we
have to. Of course you don't.
We don't want to, and so it doesn't get us elected. But we do have the Water Infrastructure Advisory Council. We do have a program set aside there that we can offset funding for water and wastewater utilities to do an asset management program, capital improvements program, stuff like that, to help offset some of those and see where the needs are for rate recovery, capital improvements, and so forth like that. So,
on the you mentioned asset management issue. That's something that the chairman and I dealt with in this bill so that you can identify where your assets are. Okay, I know I'm in the first city of the first state, right?
No, the lowest was the first town.
Lewis.
Oh,
They're 400
okay,
400 years
sorry.
old.
I got
The
that
people in
wrong.
Lewis-
That gentleman
the
right
people in
there
Lewis
told
would
me.
be upset if we.
I know, he's right there, sorry. A city in the first state, how about that? But some of your infrastructure's got to be very, very old because you've obviously developed early as a state. Do you have a pretty good idea of where all your infrastructure is? I mean, it's a small state, but I'd be interested to know, particularly in the rural areas, if this asset management piece that we've put in is going to be of help to Delaware.
The Office of Drinking Water, several years ago, had a subcontractor work with Rural Water and other agencies to hopefully identify a lot of these, go out and study every town and municipality and just find out what that figure was going to cost and where all the aging infrastructure was, so that a lot of our municipalities has taken advantage of the grants that they can get through the Water Infrastructure Advisory Council to narrow the scope down, I guess, what they need. So, yes.
But there's still a need there for
There's always a need.
more delineation and clarity.
You can't see what's buried. So
No.
there's a lot of work trying to identify where these pipes are without
Right.
doing test holes and stuff like that. So it's a big number, to do that. So.
Right. Ms. Coase-Johnson, what would you say your biggest challenges are from the public health? I mean, we talked about lead, we talked about PFAS, but is there anything else there that obviously lack of drinking water? I mean, obviously it's got to impact education in younger children, ability to economically develop certain areas. Do you want to expound on that a little bit from the public health perspective?
It was mentioned earlier, I think, in Representative Lisa Blount-Rochester's comments, and also I think others have talked about this. We are very concerned about our private well owners here in our state, and how we can support them, because oftentimes they don't live close enough to get drinking water from a public utility. And the inability to have access to that public source of water means that there's no mandatory monitoring, right, or treatment for any contaminants, right, that may be in that water. So, and when we promote recommendations for inexpensive well testing and things of that nature, but really less than 2%, we're seeing of people with private wells actually, do that on a regular basis. And so private well contaminants affect low income and environmental justice communities, we know, right, at a disproportionate rate. And in the same token, these residents often struggle to be able to afford the bottled water that they need, right, on a daily basis to support their families. So that's a challenge that we see. And we think things like promoting regionalization, where we can, and offering well rehabilitation services and more education for private well owners in our rural parts of the state are some things. In addition to maintaining the disadvantaged community, additional subsidies are necessary to help in that area.
Well, as part of this bill that we've been talking about, that we hope gets to the president's desk soon, as part of the bigger infrastructure package, we did put, I believe, $50 million into decentralized systems, such as what you're talking about. But where I was coming from, this was with Senator Booker. It kind of surprised me, being from what I consider a very rural state. He's impressed upon me that New Jersey still has very, very rural areas, which I'm sure that they do. But, we got these septic systems that have been around for way too long. They can't be replaced. Well, they could be replaced, they're too expensive to be replaced. So this will have some assistance with that to be able to hit exactly what you're talking, these systems that aren't connected to anybody, and to be able to give some assistance through the state to that individual resident rather than to a municipality or a county system. So you said one word that we heard a lot yesterday, and it's hard in a small state because we take ownership of all of our small communities. Every you mentioned you're on the city council of your small community. There's a lot of pride there. So it's hard to say we need to regionalize because you feel like you're going to give up your governance or your ability to make decisions for your own citizens. But, to get more bang for your buck, that's really the way to go. And certainly with the technology as it's moving forward, you can maybe help a little bit with the workforce issue if you can regionalize and then have your technical expertise, or even if you went into more modern ways of monitoring than the old meters and everything that we used to have, or we still have. I think that could be a way for rural America to really be more effective in this area. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Capito, thank you so much. Senator Capito has been a leader on PFAS, PFOA, permanent chemicals, clean water, clean drinking water standards, and continues to do that. And I'm privileged to help with that. Every now and then people are probably hearing a noise outside, like overhead. We have two kinds of airplanes at Dover Air Force Base, which is just down the street. One of them is C-17, more modern aircraft, a big plane, but the much bigger plane is a C-5. C-5 carries twice as much as a C-17 flies twice as far. Actually carries 3 times as much, I think. So I think what we're hearing is C-5s flying in the bounce pattern and flying overhead. I was about 7, 8 years ago, Sir Capito, I was driving literally right by this building on my way to southern Delaware, coming right down the Route 113. And there was a traffic backup, and about a half mile north of the base. And I wonder what this is. And I got a phone call from my staff on my cell phone and said, C-5 has gone in, crashed just south of the base. And what happened is, one of the largest airplanes in the world, C-5 owns more aircraft records, I think, than any aircraft in the world. And they're incredibly reliable aircraft. But human error, and I've spent a lot of years of my life as a naval flight officer. C-5 was, they're getting ready to fly, I think, over the top of the world and to land in maybe in Afghanistan with a full bag of fuel, a full load of cargo. And as they have the C-5 has 4 engines. C-5, they pre-flighted, they loaded the plane, gassed up, and they were taxiing, got the clearance, and down the runway, hit refusal speed, took off. And as they climbed out, one of the things the flight engineer checks on is engine warning lights to make sure the 4 engines are okay. And they got out of the 4 engines, they got 1 engine warning light, which is not good. And the flight engineer, rather than shutting down that engine, shut down the wrong engine. And a plane that was flying with full bag of fuel, full load of cargo, instead of flying on 4 engines, all of a sudden was flying on 2. And they tried as hard as they could to get back around to come back and try to land on the runway they just taken off on, and they ended up about a mile short. And by that time, the rescue crews on the base had been notified, and they were summoned, and they just got as fast as they could down to where the crash site was, covered it with foam, covered the aircraft with foam, put out the whatever fire was there, and at the end of the day, everybody lived. Everybody lives. A miracle. That's the good news. Bad news is there are several communities around Dover Air Force Base that have PFAS pollution in their water. And I remember another time when I was a naval flight officer stationed out in Moffett, California, close to Palo Alto. I'm driving to work one morning, and I didn't have to an early flight, so it was about 8 o'clock in the morning, driving down 101 to the base, and I could see black smoke coming up from my base off in the distance. They had no idea what was going on. And we got closer and closer. I went in the main gate, and the person at the main gate, the guard said, we had a crash here. And he said, we have at Moffett Field, we have NOAA and NASA aircraft, big airplanes. And we have the P-3s, which are pretty big 4-engine airplanes, but not as big as the NASA planes. And we have dual runways, parallel runways, so you can have 2 airplanes landing side by side, literally on different runways. And the air traffic controller made a human error, and he allowed the large NASA plane to literally land on top of the Navy plane. I think 18 people died. And during that, immediately when the crash occurred, the rescue trucks came out. They sprayed down the aircraft, trying to save as many people as they could. And there's an irony here that the chemical ingredients that were used to try to save lives in both of those crews have now threatened lives in terms of the drinking water that we have. And the question is, and this has occurred especially at military bases around the country and also at airports, we have a lot of groundwater contamination. The question is, what do you do about it? How do we clean it up? Who's going to pay for that? What kind of standards are going to be set for what is safe? What is the levels for the presence of these chemicals in our water? What is safe and we're able to drink and not have to worry about damaging our health? So these are the kinds of issues that we get to deal with. And the Senate Capitol has been a huge leader on this stuff. And I'm pleased to be able to help with that. And that's just an example, real life example from right here of what can happen with creating hazards for our drinking water. In Delaware, I think I said 1 out of 6 Delawareans depend on a well for their drinking water. That would be about 175,000 people in all. And they use private wells. They don't have access to public water system. Some of the communities here, nearby Delaware Air Force Base, that have seen their groundwater polluted by PFAS are now getting access to public water, and which is a good thing. The private well contamination affects all kinds of folks, including low-income folks. The most because they can't afford home filtration systems in many instances that eliminate pollutions, including nitrates. We have a lot of nitrate pollution. In southern Delaware, we raise all these chickens. Mm-hmm. I think I said earlier, we have, 300 chickens for every person in Delaware. That's a good thing. We sell a lot of chickens around the world. They also create a lot of manure, and which is a high phosphorus, high nitrogen fertilizer. But if you put too much on the land, it can seep into the groundwater and then even to our surface water. So that's a challenge as well. Nitrates is a real problem for us. The question I would have, this is really for the whole panel, if I could, what more can Congress and the federal government do to ensure safe, clean water for individuals who rely on private wells for their drinking water? Rick, would you like to take that one first? What more can Congress and the federal government do to ensure safe, clean water for individuals who rely on private wells for their drinking water?
Rural water works with all entities, whether it be private, municipal, and so forth. So, and at the end of the day, we're there to help provide clean, safe, potable drinking water. We often get calls at rural water about nitrates in water and stuff like how we can rectify the problem and so forth. So we work closely with the Office of Drinking Water, and they offer different test kits and so forth. So we also have, as members of the Rural Water Association in Delaware, members who have units that can abstract the nitrates and so forth and provide that service like that. So we feel that we did a fantastic job, working with the ones that are having nitrate issues. I know we can't catch them all, but there are ways to resolve and help work through the nitrate problems and so forth. So, but it is going to happen. We're in Delaware. We are farmland, so like that. So. I think with additional funding and so forth to help eliminate some of these and corrective actions and so forth, and come up with programs, we can conquer the problem. So.
Thank you. Vicki, same question. What more can Congress and the federal government do to ensure safe, clean water for individuals who rely on wells for their drinking water?
Thank you for the question, Senator Carper. First, I'd like to say that there is a private well, for private well owners, there's the private well class. There's also the National Groundwater Association that provides technical assistance along with RCAP and our many programs and SIRCAP within the state of Delaware. It's important to private well owners that they understand their well. We offer private well assessments that we come out to their home and can show them where their well is located, print out the information from DNREC, giving them the depths when it was installed, and educate them on the ways that their well could be contaminated by visually looking at the wellhead and advising them on what should be there and what shouldn't. I think it's critical that continued funding for these programs continue. The contamination issue with their, if they do have a broken septic, if they have a leaking septic, and understand that those, the septic tank being in disrepair can affect their drinking water is very important. Nitrates, it's not something that you can see, you can't smell it. They don't know that it's in their water, and they think that if it tastes good, it smells good, it looks good, then it's good. It's great water, and that's not necessarily the truth. And they think if something is contaminated, that boiling it can get rid of that contamination. And we know with nitrates that boiling it concentrates the nitrates. So I think education is so important, and continued funding to technical assistance programs like SRCAP and RCAP is very important.
All right, thank you, Vicki. Cassandra, same question.
I wholeheartedly agree with the panelists. I think offering a more robust system for well rehabilitation services, providing more public health-led programs for provision of education, right, for families who are well owners, education and tools and resources to support them. I believe the funding that Senator Capito mentioned will go a long way as well in helping to support our private well owners in our state.
Yeah. I could be mistaken on this. I've asked John Kane, who's our lead staff member on EPW, with respect to water issues, to check with our team. But I believe last time I checked, here in Delaware, we have a Department of Health and Social Services, and Lisa used to be the deputy secretary of that department. So after when she was a member of my administration, and but we have within the Department of Health and Social Services, there's a division of public health, and I think we have the capability, the Division of Public Health has the capability to provide for a couple of dollars the testing of water, that's drinking water, that for folks who don't have a public system. What do we have? $4? Yeah, $4. $4. And pretty good price for a lot of certainty and reassurance. This question, let's see. Cassandra, had you finished? I think you had.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Rick, I'm going to come back to you if I could. The issue, and I'm sure Senator Capito remembers it, the issue of worker retention, worker retraining keeps coming up. We just had earlier this week a celebration down in Georgetown, which is county seat of our southernmost county, Sussex County. And at Deltech, which is one of the finest community colleges in America, we had the dedication of its Automotive Center for Excellence. And it was a partnership between Deltech, which is largely state-sponsored. There's money that was literally, the idea was to create train people who can fix cars, trucks, vans, big cars, big trucks, and smaller ones as well. And eventually they'll be trained to work on electric-powered vehicles, and maybe eventually after that hydrogen-powered vehicles. But one of the challenges that our automotive dealers in the state have had for years is finding enough trained workers to take care of vehicles and make sure that they're working. And I remember going into an auto dealership down just about 20 miles south of here in the town of Milford about 10 years ago. We got the first Chevrolet Volt. So I had a press conference. I wanted people to know we had an electric vehicle, was a hybrid, and I want people to know about that. So we did a great press event on that. Then I went and did a tour of the shops, the repair shops. It was a Saturday, and the fellow who owned IG Building said one of our biggest challenges is just having people trained who come here and work, do this work, and we lose them. And I said, well, maybe we should pay them more money. And he said, I said it with joking, but he said we paid people to start. This was a decade ago. He said 30, 40,000. He said one person would pay almost $100,000 is to be a technician on fix cars. And I said, well, that's a lot. But as it turns out, almost every auto dealer had the same problem. had the same problem. Our poultry integrators have the same problem. And what we've done is create this partnership with Deltec, state, county, something called Economic Development Administration, an entity that's Senator Capito and I work with very closely. We have jurisdiction over them, and they invest in projects just like this, just like that one. And but what we had to do for the auto dealers, for the poultry integrators, is make sure they had a workforce. And it wasn't that the workforce was aging; they just didn't have. They just couldn't keep them. We have a similar problem all over the country, I hear, with worker retention. And we've got a bunch of these small utilities, and some of them have just one employee, maybe a couple, and they're not getting any younger, like some of my colleagues in the Senate. I mentioned Chuck Grassley earlier. He's 88. He's going to run for re-election. And I think Dianne Feinstein's 88. And who else is 88? Richard Shelby. And I told Chuck Grassley when he announced he was going to run for re-election, I said, well, when I'm 88, I'm not going to be running for re-election. And I said, I just hope I know who I am, where I am. And I'll be happy with that. But retention, workforce retention, each of you, if you give us some thoughts on that. Rick, why don't you lead us off?
380,000 water and wastewater operators throughout the country. 30 to 50% will be retiring within the next 5 to 10 years. These operators serve as public health officials and are often only persons responsible for complying with all the applicable federal, state drinking water, Clean Water Act regulations for supplying the small communities and safe drinking water and sanitation every second of the day. Again, unfortunately, a vast majority of the Delaware small community water systems have been unable to attract, train, and retain the next generation workforce due to the lack of career path coupled by low salary levels and population density. At Delaware Rural Water, we've seen this need to act quickly and partnered with the National Rural Water and the Delaware Department of Labor to initiate our water and wastewater systems operator apprenticeship program back in 2019. And we were very proud to work to address this urgent need. In fact, we just had our first graduating class this past spring. Delaware Rural Water Apprenticeship Program leverages workforce development activities, including career path, and modern thematic apprentice models for 4,000 hours of on-the-job training at a water or wastewater system, 288 hours of formal classroom training and instruction, and additional guidance from Delaware's subject matter. Some of the benefits operators get for our apprenticeship program include expanded job opportunities in rural America by including access to pre-apprenticeship, youth outreach, and mentorship programs. We've established a systematic training method for water and wastewater utilities. We've also improved the workforce participation and retention of water workers in small communities. We certify our water workers' proficiency with an identifiable career path. We've modernized the water industry's approach to workforce development. We also enhance professionalism and upskill the incumbent worker, increase the recognition of the public benefit that water and wastewater systems deliver to the communities. We always work with employers on schedule of wage increases, and it's to provide the sophisticated and advanced technologies these system operators need every day. So we're proud of our apprenticeship programs and working with the Department of Labor here in Delaware.
Can I just ask a quick question? I'm going to jump in real quick. How many people have you had go through that program?
We've got 20 in our apprenticeship program now.
And how do you recruit them?
We have our apprenticeship coordinator go out to municipalities. We work with our career path, our pathways people, so forth. We do a lot of advertising, TV advertising, so forth. If you want to change your career, you want a new path in life, we go out and research, and we just put information out there that, we're getting ready. We're starting our vets program up, where we're doing apprenticeship for vets coming back, so forth. So it's a lot of it's word of mouth, but we're also out in municipalities, communities, doing job fairs and so forth like that. So
for anybody, and with respect to retention, we have a lot of utilities, really small. Many of them have one employee, one or two employees. And in some places we're seeing a consolidation, maybe almost a merger between small utilities. And is that part of the answer to worker retention, to give them the ability to actually pay more money? Is that part of what needs to be done, or can help address this problem?
we're fortunate in Delaware. Most urban municipalities have more than one. We do have some, what we call circuit rider water operators that take care of multiple systems and so forth.
Okay. Let me ask our other witness, any thoughts on worker retention, any workforce retention? If you don't have anything for us on this, there are plenty of other questions we have. So, but anything you want to mention? Workforce retention, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say that the infrastructure that Delaware has built with our pathways programs, right, in our schools is a really good opportunity, right, to look at growing economies in places, right, where we need additional expertise for the long run, and to actually start to engage with these schools really early, right, start to engage with youth really early for them to understand that there are different career paths, right, that they can have an opportunity to engage with, that, a college degree, right, may not be the pathway for everyone, and to expose them to other opportunities. So I'm really happy to hear that this program exists in Delaware, and Delaware Rural Water is doing this, and hope that there's an opportunity to spread and scale it.
Yeah. Not everybody needs to go to college, as you know, not everybody. And sometimes we think you got to go to college in order to get a good job. Not true. Not true. And some of the jobs in most in demand pay well, or don't require a 4-year degree, may not require a 2-year associate's degree. Deltech, because our community college here in Delaware, they have something called the SEED program. And for folks students who have like a B minus average or something coming out of high school, they, right after graduation from high school, they can take advantage of the SEED scholarship and go to for 2-year college free. And a lot of them can get a certificate. If they get an associate's degree, they get a certificate that can be transferable and used around the state, around the country. But that's the other thing. A couple of our witnesses have mentioned the Pathways program. When Jack McKellar, remember Jack McKellar was our governor, a very good governor. I'd like to say he was one of the 2 or 3 best governors we ever had. I wish you were here to say that. But one of the things that they launched in his administration was Pathway program. So we got all our kids graduating from high school. Some are going to go to 2-year college. Some are going to go to 4-year college. Some will go into the military, and some will just wondering, well, what do I do now? And the idea of the Pathways program was to create 20, 25 pathways for students to literally start working out throughout their time in high school. We started, I think, with 27 kids in the first year that we did it. Now we got about 25,000, which may not sound like a lot, but in Little Delaware, that's a lot of people. That is a lot of students, and so we're very proud of that program. Yes,
I'd just like to comment that I wrote a 12-week program and took it into the Indian River High School District and talked with the career paths coordinator, and she provided me with 10 students. By the time we ended the 12-week, we were down to 8 students. Taking those on field trips and so forth, and giving them exams, having municipality city managers come in, public works directors quiz these kids while they were taking tours, and every one of them were on spot with the 12-week. And we're proud to say that upon graduation, 3 of these students were hired by municipalities as soon as they graduated, and 2 in the wastewater field, 1's in the water field now. So we're proud of that work that we did there in the schools. And like I said, we just started this program up in the William Penn High School starting this week. So we're proud of that. So
William Penn High School is the largest high school in Delaware, biggest than some colleges. All right, Sen Capito, I have a couple more questions, but why don't you take it over?
Yeah, I have one final question for everybody. I talked about resilience in a little bit in my opening statement. Infrastructure needs to be resilient in terms of being able to withstand extreme weather events, whether it's climate change or something like that. I'm sure being on the coast, your weather events are different than ours. But I think it can encompass more of that in terms of resiliency. So we can start over here with, I'll just call you Cassandra, if that's okay. When you think about the different stressors that can test a water system's resiliency, what stressors are at the forefront, and especially with respect to protecting our public health?
So, there are many stressors, that we can think of. So things like, more frequent storms, right, due to climate change. I think that's a big thing here with us seeing more and more frequent storms and the unpredictability of those storms. And then the issues that then occur as it relates to our water systems as a result, right?
Yeah, that's what I thought about, yeah.
Yep, as a result of those storms. So, I think from a public health perspective, really working to equip, right, communities with the tools that they need to actually be able to be more resilient. As it relates to these storms. Recently, you may have heard Senator Capito that here in our great state, just in Wilmington, due to Hurricane Ida, right, we are still dealing with and still reeling from the floodwaters that have damaged over 200 homes, right, in the city of Wilmington. And there are then additional repercussions as it relates, right, to the water system in those communities. So we really do need, from a public health perspective and also from an infrastructure perspective, right? I don't know what comes first, the chicken or the egg, right? For us, looking at Wilmington, I think it's an infrastructure perspective first. Really being able to identify those neighborhoods that need better drainage systems, right, to be built like yesterday, that will then support their public health needs in the long term.
Good, thank you. Ms. Prettyman?
Thank you for the question, Senator Capito. With AWEA, the requirement was 3,300 in population above. You needed to have your risk and resilient assessment and your emergency response plan. Most municipalities, right at that 3,000 population, may not have the staff to be able to complete those. And so I think technical assistance providers being able to come in and assist them is very important, but also the population below 3,000. The smaller systems still see the same issues, intense rain events, flooding. So I think it's important that we be able to also provide them with that assistance to do a short form type of risk and resilience assessment. COVID showed us a lot about where some municipalities fall short, especially with the municipalities that have only that one operator. And if that operator fell sick with COVID, it was hard to be able to maintain the testing that is required to be done on a daily basis, or if something were to happen with the drinking water. So understanding where you're more vulnerable at is very important, and we need to educate our municipalities, and I believe even the smaller ones below the 3,000 is very important for them to be able to do that. Thank you.
Mr. Duncan?
We've been working with risk and resilience for 31 years since I've been there. Every water system is under some type of risk and has some type of resistance. Towns in the north have different issues, have different risks than our coastal towns. We in the coastal side, we deal with saltwater intrusion. We monitor that, and the north we have the PFAS more heavily than we do in the southern part. So we work with the water system very close and making sure they're up to date on their EPA guidelines and so forth. They follow the criteria and make sure they're reporting those forms and so forth. But we also want to make sure they have their emergency response plans up to date. So you got to have those. So, but in doing that, you have to maintain that data. Like we're saying, that 30 to 50% of the workforce is retiring. So the next operator come in may not have that knowledge of completing a risk resilience program. So providing technical assistance is a plus. We got to have those providers out there working with these systems, making sure they understand the rules and regulations of risk and resilience. So,
Well, thank you. I think I will say my anecdotal story is living in Charleston, West Virginia. We had a chemical, you'll remember this maybe, massive chemical spill into our main water provider and of about 600,000 people, and affected my own home. And, you know, when you've lived through something like that, you really realize, number one, what's the emergency plan? Well, I'm not sure we really knew what that was. What is this chemical that has been spilled into our water, and what kind of health effects does it have? Didn't have that answer. And it goes really to the question you're saying. You need to pre-identify your risks. I mean, this chemical tank that leaked was an eighth of a mile upriver from the intake. I mean, somebody should have been able, you know, they should have known that. And you would think they would ask the question, what's in those tanks and what could possibly, and honestly, we had, it ended up to not be a big health issue as much as, you know, you could smell it in your water. And so it just erodes your confidence, even though maybe I'm not going to drink this water that's smelling like this. And even though they say, oh, go ahead, you can take a shower. Well, you know, who wants to shower in licorice smelling water that you're not really sure what it is? So I think all the answers that you've put forward after having lived through an experience like that, I think you're right on it. It's just enacting it. And I do agree with when you get into the smaller systems, it is hard for people. So a short form, you know, maybe that's the answer there to help them. And then obviously more technical expertise as they go along. But thank you. That's the end of my questions.
All righty. I have one more quick question, and this will be for you, Vicki. And I just ask you to take just a minute or two. You could probably spend the afternoon talking about it, but I don't want you to do that. Just take a couple of minutes and tell us a little bit more about the ongoing work related to PFAS contamination in Delaware, how the contamination has impacted communities, especially small communities with limited resources. We're especially interested in your personal perspective in dealing with these contaminants in Blades just a couple of years ago. Just keep it brief, but just give us those thoughts. Thank you.
Oh, you're right. I probably could talk to you about it. First, the impact that PFAS has on a community can be devastating. And I do want to thank you and your team for being there in our time of crisis. It indeed was a learn on the fly experience. I had never heard of PFAS prior to being told by the EPA that it's present in your drinking water and you're well above the HAL. It was, you know, a lot of learning about, again, this was several years ago, so we know a lot more now, but what best filtration system, what will work best with the existing plant. We had so many questions. Do we interconnect with our, with Seaford? Do we, will the filtration system that we did go with be built and delivered on time? The components and the equipment that's needed to install it. So it was a lot of questions, and we were very fortunate to have a municipality from up north that had recently been through it come down and assist. They even lent the town the hoses to connect for the filtration system to the, you know, to the existing plant. It was great that the state was there and we were able to get HISCA funds to assist with the financial side. You know, the filtration system cost well over $300,000 to purchase, ship it, install it. But could you imagine that on a municipality of 1,500 with a more than 22% poverty rate, the operations and maintenance costs that it will be, I had mentioned earlier that it was over $30,000 to replace the media. And when you're first at it, you don't know if that media needs to be replaced every 3 years or every 6 years. So there's testing that has to be done several times a year in order to see how that media is taking out the PFAS. And so those expenses are incurred on a municipality, and it simply isn't fair for a municipality of that size or any municipality to have to bear the cost of those testing, of the media replacement, and the disposal of the media, because it has to be disposed of, a hazardous material. So there's all that cost that's involved. The citizens should not bear the burden of that financial situation. And we need to make the polluters pay. So that's my.
Good. Thank you for those words of wisdom. Let me close with this. Senator Capito and I worked with every Democrat and Republican member of our committee, all 20 of us, to write legislation dealing with clean drinking water, wastewater treatment, and a variety of other infrastructures, roads, highways, bridges, and on and on and on. We reported out the legislation unanimously out of committee. The full Senate passed the legislation 89-2. That provided really the building block on which the rest of the infrastructure package was loaded. And while all this was going on, Senator Capito was negotiating with the President of the United States, right from in Delaware, to try to find common ground between the Congress and the administration on infrastructure issues. And I think she, through her personal efforts, really helped to create an environment where a consensus could be developed in the Senate that led to a 69 and I think a 30 vote in favor of very broad bipartisan infrastructure package that includes the water issues that we're talking about. That legislation's over in the House now, and they were waiting for a negotiation to bear fruit between Senator Manchin from West Virginia and maybe a couple of others, and the leader of the House, Nancy Pelosi, see if we can't find agreement on the second piece of another package, a related package called reconciliation that helps families in a lot of good ways, focuses on climate change. But they've got to have agreement on that piece so we can move forward. We got to get this infrastructure bill passed. There's a great need in West Virginia, in this state, and 48 other states as well. And the legislation that we've developed and have literally waiting to go in the House, it would change lives, save lives. And there's a great sense of urgency for that. And we want to just underscore that here today. I just really want to thank you for being here. Thank you for your life's work. Thank you for your caring about the people of this state and other states as well. And keep up the good work. Before we adjourn, a little bit of housekeeping. I want to ask the unanimous consent to submit for the record a variety of materials that include letters from stakeholders and other materials that relate to today's hearings. And when you ask for unanimous consent, you listen to see if anybody's going to object. Nobody's going to object. Here we go. So we're good to go. Additionally, the senators will be allowed to submit questions for the record through the close of business on Friday, October 29th. And we will compile those questions. We'll send them to our witnesses. We ask our witnesses to reply by Friday, November the 12th. In closing, again, we want to thank all of you for your testimony, for response to our questions, the work that you do, and for doing so much for the people of our state to provide for them essential utility services and really to provide for them life and health. Can't do much more for people than that, so thank you. And with that, this hearing is adjourned against Senator Capito. Thank you. I want to thank you, staff, John Kane. John, would you raise your hand? And the other members of our team, John Kane's team, anybody else here? Danny, thank you so much. And Travis, would you just raise your hand?
And Jess and Will.
Jess and Will, would you guys raise your hand? Thanks. Thank you so much. This is a team that works together. We're workhorses. We're proud to be able to serve all of you, our states, and the rest of this country. And with that, this hearing is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.